Testing, testing, all right. Hello, my name's Monica, and I'm the founder of Inner Foundation. And today here, I'm going to be talking about the journey going from engineer to founder. It's been a while since I was last on stage, so I'm a little bit nervous and very excited to be talking at DevConnect, and that's thanks to BuidlGuild. So thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Austin, if you're around, for inviting me here today. Allow me to start off by reading a little bit the room. I want to know how many engineers are here today. All right, quite a few of you. How many of you are founders or want to become founders? A lot of you as well, all right. And how many of you have been around since the ICO season? Less so. Well, the reason I ask is because the ICO season was one of the best seasons to build in crypto. 4,300 companies were built between 2017 and 2018, between for-profits and non-profits. The next best time to build in crypto was the DeFi summer, where 3,800 companies were built between 2021 and 2022. But it's never been easier to build in crypto than it is today. The regulatory environment is a lot more favorable. You can build on top of existing infrastructure and services, so you don't have to build it from scratch on your own. You have a lot bigger market. Your mom, your uncle has heard about crypto, can even use a wallet, which was definitely impossible back in 2017. And of course, you have AI, which allows you to build 10x faster. However, it's not easier to succeed. 90% of you who want to build something of your own will still fail. And you're not going to fail because you're not good enough builders. You're going to fail because you're not good enough founders. The first myth that every engineer that becomes a founder believes in when they start off is that if you build a good enough product, then you'll be successful. Well, that depends a little bit on your definition of success. How many of you know the story of William Shockley and the Transistor? Well, good news, I'm going to tell the story anyways. The transistor was one of the most important inventions of our century. Without the transistor, we wouldn't have calculators, radios, and it was the beginning of computers as well. And it was invented by 3 scientists at Bell Labs in 1947. One of them was William Shockley. Shockley was not only a great scientist, they actually won the Nobel Prize for the transistor. He was also someone who had like a business vision, right? So he wanted to take the transistor to the market and commercialize it. But because he couldn't do it in Bell Labs, he decided to spin off, and he built Shockley Semiconductor Lab. However, he was good at being a scientist. He was good at identifying a business vision, and he was even good at attracting the top talent in the market. But he was not so good as a manager. Legend has it that he was actually quite tyrannical, to the point that just 2 years after creating Shockley Semiconductor Lab, 8 of his lead scientists threatened him to leave unless he either changed his management style or he was replaced. Spoiler, he was not replaced. He didn't change his management style. Those 8 lead scientists decided to leave him, and they would become known as the Traitor's 8. They found outside capital, which was an innovation in itself. We're talking about 1957. Startups were not a thing yet. But thanks to this investment, they actually created Fairchild Semiconductor. For those who don't know, Fairchild Semiconductor is the foundation of Silicon Valley as we know it today. Compared to Shockley, they actually figured out how to get money, how to commercialize the transistor. They became the biggest manufacturer of semiconductors with thousands of employees and 1.3 billion in revenue. However, as a lot of companies, over time, they became like a big corporate slow giant, and they stopped innovating. And as a lot of companies, stopping innovating means that you start losing talent. In their case, they even lost a few of the initial founders. I don't know about you, if you knew about Fairchild before my talk. My mom didn't, but my mom didn't know about the company that these fair children that left Fairchild built afterwards. And it was Intel. Intel actually figured out how to take the technology, take it to the market, raise capital, build a great team, build the right incentives for this team to stay, and to continue innovating over time. So much so that 60 years afterwards, it's still rocking, and we all know about Intel today. And their scale was much bigger than Fairchild. There were tens of tens of thousands of employees and tens of billions in revenue. This all was started in a way by Shockley. Shockley was good at building a great technology, but he was not so good at building a great business. And he actually lost quite a big, sizable opportunity. So Shockley didn't fail as a builder. For that, he won a Nobel Prize. He failed as a founder. For that, he's lost his business. And I can only speculate how it was for Shockley. What I say is like Shockley got stuck off stage one of becoming a founder. And even though I don't know how it was for him, I do know how it is for engineers. For engineers, stage one is going from code to hell. Your life as an engineer is pretty straightforward. You build, you ship, success. If there's something you don't know, you learn it. And if there's a bug, you fix it. Delivering value depends only on you, and you can fill the gaps and be successful. But life as a founder is a little bit more complicated, because if you want to build something, you need some capital. If you want to raise capital, you either have to talk to investors or sell. But if you're fundraising or selling, you're not really building, so you need to build a team for that. But if you have a team, you have to manage it, right? So the day after an engineer starts underperforming, another engineer is threatening to leave because there's someone else that is going to pay them better. Your comms team is disconnected with the rest of the organization. The recruiter doesn't really understand what you're really looking for. The day after, your competitor ships the same product you just released, and that means that the investors start losing interest, right? So you're back to square one. So what do you do in this situation? You do like you always did. Well, if you have an issue, you fix it. The problem is your backlog of issues just keeps piling up. And you start wondering, why is this so hard? Why are people so difficult? And you kind of find yourself in hell. Most founders find one of three exits out of hell. The first one is blaming. People are not good enough. Only if I had better investors, only if I had better employees, only if I have better customers that really get what I'm building. Then it turns inward, right? You're not good enough. It's doesn't matter how much you do, it feels like you're further and further from your goals, right? So you start questioning why you love to build so much, and now you actually hate it. The weight is so heavy that a lot of them actually rage quit or died quietly, or just bail in this process. But there's one thing that you know you're good enough, which is tech. So it's it circles back to the myth of it's because the technology is not good enough. So only if I build a good enough product, then maybe I'll succeed. But we know that's a lie. Any of these three exits keep you stuck in the loop of stage one of going from code to hell. And here I share some real testimonials from the founders I work with. Hell feels like you believe you can build anything, and suddenly you can't. You have completely broken feedback loops, because as an engineer, they stay in your head, but as a founder, they're just all over the place. And you feel a complete loss of agency and control. Another testimonial says it's completely overwhelming. You're accountable for every single decision, but you don't have time to be an expert on everything. And this is quite brutal, this one. I've never worked so hard to feel like I achieved so little. The problem is the skills that make you successful as an engineer are the same skills that are going to make you isolated as a founder. The better you are at building alone and at learning alone, the more likely you are at being alone. And that's a problem. Because as an engineer, you were shipping a product. The complexity was just the technology. So the execution system could be you. And so your capacity was more than enough to achieve your goals. But as a founder, your goals are much bigger, and the complexity is also much bigger. So you're shipping a company. Now you have to deal with the tech, the market, the people, the capital. And so if the execution system is centered around you, well, let me tell you that no matter how much you do, no matter how much effort you put in, your time, intellect, and execution capacity are never going to be enough to pursue your goals. So you have to look at your goals, look at your system, and realize that your capacity is not enough. So what do? You need to scale yourself. The problem is not others. The problem is not you. The problem is not the code. The problem is that your system is not good enough. But the good news is that engineers are great at building systems. You actually already have the right skill set to become great founders. And there are many great founders in crypto that were engineers before that. You only need to apply your system thinking and your system building, and just switch from like solving problems yourself to finding scalable solutions to your problem, and essentially just architect a company as a system, which is what Fairchild figured out. They weren't like Shockley, thinking like scientists and building as scientists. They were like thinking like scientists and building like founders, and that's what you can do as well. When you act like an engineer, you do the things. But the thing is that the company doesn't need you to do the things yourself. The company needs you to be able to allow others to do the things, and so a lot more people have a lot more capacity to achieve your goals. So what you'd actually need is to lead better. And leading better, it's kind of a whole completely different approach to achieving your goals. So instead of looking at your skills and issues, you should be thinking in systems and goals. And a company, it's not so different from like engineering systems. You still have components. There's a logic on how everything is connected. The different components are connected with interfaces, processes. There's feedback loops between them, dependencies, bottlenecks, data that you can use to create your requirements. So you just need to map everything, design the interfaces, understand the logic. But I'm not going to lie to you. There's a fundamental difference. Engineering systems are predictable, are deterministic. Human systems are a little bit more fuzzy. They're actually more probabilistic, more organic. And in a way, I kind of like that AI today is like more embedded into companies, because AI agents have this organic component that is kind of in between humans and technical systems. But regardless whether they're coding systems or human systems, they all follow a logic, they all have patterns, and they both can be understood. So whenever you face a people issue, like the underperforming engineer, instead of facing the underperforming engineer themselves, you should be looking at the interfaces. Who is this person working with? How's your hiring process looking like? How's your onboarding? Maybe you don't even need this role that you're hiring for. And the same applies when you have market problems or fundraising problems. Maybe the market has changed, and you have new data and new requirements that you have to collect. Maybe you need to build a better feedback loop between your product and your customers. But if it was that easy to go from code to hell and just building the company as a system, Fairchild would be successful, but they were not. They stopped innovating, they lost key talent, and the founders left. They were successful as a company, but they eventually started lacking a little bit, right? And it's not that Shockley didn't know that he was bad at management and he needed to fix that. I mean, the Traitor's aide threatened him before leaving the company, but still he didn't quite fix it. And Fairchild, the same. It's like they were scientists. They knew they were not innovating anymore, but still they missed the opportunity of creating the microprocessor and building Intel. So why they got stuck? Well, sometimes the system that needs upgrading is not the company. The system that needs upgrading is you as a founder. A lot of founders, especially later on in the process of building a company, forget that they are part of the system and they're a key component of it. As a founder, you're also a complex system with your own components, like your people skills, your emotional capacity, your energy levels, and you also have your own interfaces, your preferences in how you communicate, how you make decisions, how you handle stress. And I'm sorry to tell you that you can outsource every single role and responsibility, but there's one single role that you cannot outsource, which is being the founder yourself. And the problem is that your company's goals never cease to get bigger, and your company's complexity never cease to get bigger either. So you're constantly confronted by new frontiers that are challenging yourself. And in a way, I guess what happened to Shockley or Fairchild is that they didn't realize that if you stall, your company stalls. If you break, your company breaks. And that's the difference between Fairchild and Intel, which takes us to the third stage of becoming a founder, which is your infinite frontiers. Remember when I said that the better you are at building alone and learning alone, the more likely you are at being alone? Well, that doesn't happen at the very beginning. It happens all the time at every single frontier. It might be day 3,000, frontier 33. You already grew yourself so many times and faced so many challenges, and you might still find yourself in hell. Because every time you find a new frontier, you're confronted with a new abyss. There's like two instincts that get triggered. There's like an animal instinct that's telling you to just consolidate whatever you already have, like Fairchild did, and just protect, hide, maintain the business as it is. But there's also a human instinct that tells you to fight, to expand, to explore. Well, let me tell you that not always the human instinct wins. Every frontier is a blessing and a curse. Once you see the opportunity for growth, it's going to be very hard for you to ignore. Let me read a passage from Robert J. Johnson that says that to be touched by a godlike experience is to become open to learning a godlike consciousness. That will be your frontier. Godlike in a Greek Olympian sense. Once you have been touched in this way, you can never return to simple, carefree, unconscious ways. That's a blessing if you can cross this frontier. But maybe if you don't catch this opportunity, it's going to be someone else's. The same way Fairchild took Shockley's opportunity, and the same way Intel built on Fairchild's opportunity. And crypto is an opportunity just like the transistor. It's a technology that changed our industry and our society far beyond the technology side. It's one of the most important inventions of our time. The transistor was the seed of the microprocessor, but it was not the microprocessor. And without the microprocessor, we wouldn't have home computers, we wouldn't have the internet, and certainly would not have Web3. But like Fairchild, it's kind of been 10 years since like the beginning of Ethereum, and we come a long way. Like we actually, crypto has become a lot more powerful, but we haven't found the microprocessor yet. There's a lot of promises of how we will change our society and our economic and our governance that we haven't seen. So crypto is still early. And you have a unique opportunity to become the leaders of our millennium, but not without its challenges. It's easier to build than ever, but it's harder to build than ever. We traded the regulatory and infrastructure challenges for market changes, less capital, and a lot more institutional competition. So being a founder is not for everyone. You will face many sleepless nights. And many founders ask me, is it worth it? Let me read another passage. It says, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. The phone notifications are muted, but its flat screen stares back at you like a mirror. Somewhere between the darkness of the night and the faint light of dawn, and a paralyzing voice starts whispering, maybe you're deluding yourself. Maybe this whole thing is a waste. Maybe you should just give up before you lose everything. So is it worth it? Well, the truth doesn't live in the ignorance of risk or the blind faith to success. Truth is unreasonable. Truth lies in staying awake to all sides, with your eyes wide open and feeling the full weight of the danger and the potential on your chest. In a place where you listen, where you bear the weight of doubt, and you find not only one, but many voices. In that precise place where you're neither reckless nor paralyzed, but fully awake. It's worth it if you can find your way back to the fire. It's worth it if you're awake to the danger, awake to the potential. So I really invite to ask yourselves whether you like the idea or the journey to be a founder. But if you do embark on the journey of becoming a founder, remember to look at your goals, look at your systems, find your frontier. The beauty of becoming a founder is that there's no ceiling. The challenge is that you're the ceiling. So always remember to build beyond yourself. Thank you. ¿Hay preguntas? Does anyone have any questions? Either way, you can find me in the venue afterwards. Thank you very much for listening.